Greg here for Partifal. I got Scott behind the camera, and I'm here to talk about critical effects, called critical effects. And this particular video is called Fishing for Crits, rather, and I'll explain why it's called Fishing for Crits later. But what is a crit? A crit is when you get a successful hit and you roll a double in the result. So if you roll 2 dice and you need a 5 to hit, and you roll 2 3s, that's a crit. If you roll a 3 and a 4, that's not a crit. There's lots of models in the game that have abilities, and there's lots of models in the game that have critical abilities. So a lot of the critical abilities are the same as the abilities that don't have crit. They just require a roll of a double, regardless of how many dice you're rolling, and a successful hit to trigger that effect. So some of the types of crits are crit smite, crit shred. I'll point at some of the models down here that have crit effects: crit decap, crit poison, crit consume, crit pitch, crit devastation, crit fire, corrosion, knockdown, disruption, ram, brutal, catastrophic stagger, paralysis, and grievous. So lots and lots of abilities, but they all require that double on the dice roll. So we got Druids of Orboros here, very utility unit. On their Force Bolt, they have crit knockdown, so that means if they roll a double on a successful hit, they'll knock the model down, and then they can pull it or push it. This guy's got, what, crit smite? He's got crit smite, so he hits something, you can slam it with a crit, of course. These guys have crit knockdown on their rock slammy magic attack, I can't remember what it's called. Borka has crit stagger on his big mace thing, and that means you lose your initials and you can't cast spells and whatnot. The Coven of Gargast, they have a spell that causes crit shadowbind. So that used to be a big deal, and not so much of a big deal anymore, but it still has a massive death debuff. That's right. The Conquest on its gun has critical devastation. Means if you hit, models are thrown away from him d6 inches. We got the Desecrator, who nobody uses, but he's got crit shred on his little saw blade thing. That means he gets a free attack if he hits a crit. What are they called again? Long Riders. Tuffalos. They have crit knockdown on their mount attacks. Gunny, Trollcaster, he has crit devastation, same thing as the Conquest gun on his gun. The Convergence Monitor has crit brutal on its ranged attack, so it gets an additional die on damage if it rolls a crit. The Mercenary Mule Warjack, it also has crit devastation on its gun. And we got the Warhog here, who has crit knockdown on his tusks. So they're all cool abilities. They're all can be very important, especially the knockdown ones that can start your sort of assassination run or something like that. The big thing is that you need the crit. So what are your chances of critting? Now this is a very sort of complicated math statistics sort of thing. I'm going to annotate some links on the bottom to some great charts that are available online. One's on Daka, the best one that I've found. And there's another one that was done by Captain Spud and Corpasius that also has just the percentage hits and stuff like that. So that's very informative. But just an example, on a 2d6 roll to hit a Def 10 model, the chances of you critting, so these are small numbers, on 2d6, 10 is 5.56%. So that's a 10 to hit, sorry. So on a Def 10 model, if you're shooting with the magic ability 7, let's say, so you only need a 3, right? That's how you do this chart in Daka. Your actual chance of critting is 13.89%. So that's not fantastic by any means. But if you can find a way to get, these are the ways I'm going to talk about bettering your odds or trying to game the math involved in getting crits. The things that you can do are get more dice. The more dice you have, the better your chance of critting. So for example, the same Druids shooting a Def 10 model, with their 2 dice, they need 16, or they're going to have about a 14% chance of success. But if you get that, say the World Wrath, and you use his Animus, which gives the Druids an additional die on their attacks, that increases the chances of a crit up to 44%. So that's more reliable. And the Druids are a good example of another way you can up your odds, is that repeat the attack over and over again. So if you have 6 Druids with Force Bolt and you want to knock something down, well, use the World Wrath Animus, or you just keep trying over and over again. And that's why it's called fishing for crits, because the more times you throw your dice down, the better your statistical odds of actually getting the success. There's some other things that can help you help you get that critical effect. Spells like Signs and Portents, that's on like Vlad 1. That's a spell that adds an additional die to attack rolls in his control area, but you have to drop the lowest die. So you have the benefit of rolling more dice, but you don't have the control of picking which dice you want to get for the crit. Occult Whispers with Zerkova 2, that adds an additional die on spell attacks, so it's really good for her spell Hoarfrost, which has critical stationary or critical freeze or something like that. It basically makes the model stationary. So she can roll 4 dice on that, and say your caster is defense 16, she's magic ability 7, so you need a 9 to hit. If you're throwing 4 dice, you have a 67% chance of getting that crit. So that's pretty good, not bad. It's not a sure thing, but it's a lot better than 16% or something like that. Guided Hand, I know that the Harbinger has that. It gives you an additional die on attack rolls, or the first attack roll that the model makes. That can help you get those triggers as well. Boosting, in addition to additional dice, or just boosting alone helps you get that crits, like I mentioned with the Druids. Just getting an additional die on a Def 10 model increases their chance of a crit astronomically. Ashland's Feet is probably the best way to fish for crits, because with her Feet Roulette, you roll 2 additional dice for every attack, and you pick which dice you want. So with a Mule, you can throw 5 dice into an attack, pick the 2 you want to get rid of, and you got 3 dice. You're probably going to get a crit devastation on that. But then you have to be playing Ashland and Mercenaries. But so her Feet is probably the best for getting crits. The World Wrath's Animus, or World Wrath's Animus, like I mentioned, adds an additional die for magic attacks against models in his 10-inch or within 10 inches of him or something like that. Helps you get those crits that you need. And a spell like Dark Guidance, which adds an additional die on daily attack rolls in the caster's control area, can also help trigger those critical effects. Lastly, the way that you can help get more crits is with rerolls. And there's not as many of these sort of things, but Calandra can use Fury off of her to try to reroll attacks to get crits if she wants to, or just to get hits. Epic Morvana, if you don't get the crit that you need, you can try rerolling it. And Puppet Strength is available like on Will Breakers, Scoring Will Breakers, and the Wither Shadow Combine, so that you can help. You're just throwing more dice at the problem, trying to get that statistical hit. So in reality, the odds of critting generally are poor or unreliable. Sometimes you can get those percentages up to like 60, 65% or something like that. That's not bad. Depending on how many times you can throw your dice at that problem, it might actually come to fruition, but it's something that's difficult to rely on. It's dicey, and you're fishing. And the problem with that, when you get to sort of like high-level competitive play, you might be able to hit that 6 out of 10 of your games, and it will alter the state of the game, or it will just give you a win on assassination or something like that. But that still leaves 4 out of 10 of your games that you're probably not going to win, or you might not win. So it's not as reliable as playing the game in an attrition type of manner or something like that. There's other ways that you can assassinate that are statistically more probable than going for a crit effect. And in that sense, you should look at crit effects as gravy, if you will, just like an additional ability that you can get. And that's partly why you see certain models over other models. You see Druids because all their base abilities are amazing. The crit knockdown on their Force Bolt, it's just something extra. If you knock him down, hey, great, he's really going to die to your Stalker. But the Force Bolt is also the push-pull effect. That's what you want. They have counter magic, they have elemental protection, they're very annoying. The Desecrator, crit shred, you just don't see the guy. I mean, I built a list where I put a couple Desecrators in with P-Scar. I thought it'd be cute, try to fish for the crit shred. It doesn't work very well. It's not, you're trying to play a math game that doesn't really pay out all that well. Tuppelos you do see because their basic abilities are good. They hit pretty hard. Trolls have a lot of spells that buff their damage output. And if you use Horthel with them, he gives them an additional die on their mount attacks. So that ups the chance of the gravy roll, the crit knockdown type of thing. The Monitor you don't see too much of because most of the rat is fairly low. in Convergence. I mean, on Mother's Feet turn, sure they might be able to hit those crits or something like that, but it's an unreliable result. So if you're going to play with crits, I would say be wary about building a list around trying to math or game a crit effect. It could be fun, it could be cute, but it's not going to be terribly reliable. So don't be surprised or don't complain if it doesn't happen. Enjoy them when they do. It's just bonus. It's gravy. Okay? So that's crit effects. Play with them. Enjoy them. Try to remember you have them. That's always the hardest part. And when you're rolling dice, even if I don't have a model with a crit effect, I usually roll the dice and I'm like, hit, no crit, right? Or hit, crit, and then you can go like, oh, okay, does this model have a crit effect that I should know about or something like that. So it's just a good reminder. So there you go. That's crit effects. Have fun.
Do you have a favorite crit moment?
A favorite crit moment?
My worst crit moment was at the SOO playing Chatty.
Oh, yes.
Gorshade is in cover, and he might have been engaged. It was ridiculous. He's like, well, I'm just going to do a rock hammer at you anyways. I need box cards.
Nails it.
Box cards, knocked down. Like, that's great.
That's a game-changing moment for a crit. But like I said, that you can't rely on that type of stuff. It just doesn't happen. I'm gonna annotate those two charts. Those are really informative. The Captain Spud one is really good, and the other one is good just for even like looking up your percentages to hit and that type of thing. Like I played a game on the weekend where a guy needed a 14, a 15, and a 12 to hit to sort of like trigger this assassination. He did have puppet strings on 2 of those rolls, but I looked them up and I was like actually surprised how low the probability of hits were those. But he did manage to hit all of them, so dice happen. Anyways, enjoy.